Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. In episode 228, we discuss the state of the Detroit Lions during their bye week, and they enter it 5-2. Not quite the midway point of the season at week 8, but it's really the only break we have this season, so we'll take a look at the first 7 weeks. Where is this team expectation-wise? What's working well? Are there any areas of conversation we want to have? Have our expectations changed? What moves might be in store? And what's the competition looking like? We'll try to answer those questions and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Theo Riddick, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Coach Jerry Angers, the former Michigan High School Coach of the Year. He was named Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions. He is a scouting and training director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, as always, good to talk football with you, even if the Lions aren't playing this weekend.
Yeah, stress-free Sunday. Totally awesome.
All right, well, to join both of us in that awesomeness is James Cook, the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. He's also the sports writer of the year for Community Newspaper Holdings Incorporated. James, glad to have you with us as well.
Good to be here. Good to have a stress-free Sunday. Actually took a nap on a Sunday afternoon, which that pretty much could only happen when the Lions are not playing. So good day.
Yeah, definitely. Nice, beautiful day in Michigan. Woke up this morning, brewed my wife a cup of coffee, as I often do. Did that because I was able to use some Roaster Jack coffee. They are the sponsor of our show. They've been roasting incredible beans since 1999. Perfect for your morning cup, which that's what we did here at our household today. Could fuel a whole crew if you got more than 1 or 2 people. You can order fresh at roasterjack.com. You do get 20% off if you use the code LIONS. Get to put the word LIONS in the code and get a 20% discount. Roaster Jack Coffee. Brew great coffee and go Lions.
Hey, one thing I keep forgetting to bring up. You know how good that coffee tastes? You ought to taste it out of a Not the Same Old Lions coffee mug, Not the Same Old Lions podcast coffee mug. It just tastes so much better, but just wanted to put that in there.
There you go. You add one to the other and you're double up into the recipe. So, all right. Well, Coach James, Lions made it to the bye week at 5-2. I think it's a number that most people would be pretty darn happy with. They were in second place going into the bye week when we entered there due to the Packers having that tie. But let's just start right there. What's your biggest takeaway from the first section of the season in a couple sentences? James, let's start with you.
Lots and lots of injuries, but they've gone 5-2 despite it. But unlike last year, not a lot of them are season ending, and there's reinforcements on the way. I mean, they've got Rodrigo, Pascal, Davenport, Reed, Arnold, Joseph, Branch, Maddox, Frazier, all coming back within this week or next week after that kind of thing. Baki, I think too, and then Manu and Dorsey down the road. Even Hassanin is working out again, so he could be somebody that they could re-sign here in a few weeks after that the time period goes off of his release. How they have to not have him for so long before they can re-sign him, and I'm hoping that this helps Taylor Decker's shoulder, that he can get right.
Yeah, and we're going to get into all that injury stuff even just a little bit deeper as we get going, but you're exactly right. I'm going to echo some of that. I'm very happy with our record, especially when you look at what it's taken to get there, to get to that 5-2, and I think that tells a big part of the story. We're going to get into that as well. Coach, how about you?
Yeah, the same. I mean, we picked quarters at the beginning of the year, and we said, of course, this was set week 7, not week 8. I think we all came to the conclusion we felt they'd be 6-2, and so they're right on path for that. It's kind of like what Dan Campbell, stay ahead of the chain, stay on course, those things like that. So I think they're in pretty good shape, and I think that's one of the things. The development of the defense over these 7 weeks has been unbelievable. Again, we'll talk about the players later, but That's the big thing. Offense is the offense right now, but the defense I think has been carrying us definitely, and looking forward to see how that changes for the second half +2, right? Something like that.
Yep. Well, exactly, and as you said, the defense has definitely evolved quite a bit, and there's a lot to look at, and the big thing is stay ahead of the chains, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that year when they started off really bad and they finished 9-8, but that 1-6 start meant the margin for error, the room for error
Mm-hmm.
was minimal, and so if you
Mm-hmm.
stay ahead of the chains, kind of like if you keep a lead in a game, you got a little bit more influence on things, and you can kind of run your game versus playing somebody else's game or playing outside your comfort zone. So, expectation wise, James, we kind of said we're right where they thought they'd be. Let me set a couple things up here. Entering week 8, the Lions offense enters the NFL ninth in total yards, 13th in passing, 5th in rushing. They are third, though, in points scored. So
Mm-hmm.
that right there tells you how good the offense has been doing. The defense, 8th in total yards, 16th against the pass, 5th against the run, and 12th in points allowed. So, James, are the Lions where you wanted them to be right now?
Yeah, I think 5-2 is right about where we all expected them to be. This stretch that they have coming up here with Minnesota, Washington, and Philly in the next 3 weeks is going to be pretty huge, though. And then then they get the Giants after that, and then they have another grueling 4-game stretch of Green Bay, Dallas, Rams, and Steelers, and then end the season with a couple of more division games with Minnesota and Chicago. So they don't really have many weeks off coming up. Even the Giants are showing signs of life. Although they lost Cam Skadaboo this week, so
Yeah.
that's a big hit for them. But they're a team that you can't just walk in and win against.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I like where the Lions are at right now, but they've got obviously a lot of work to do still.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's one of the encouraging things is even though they're at 5-2, we haven't seen them play anywhere close to their best football as a complete team. I think,
Mm-hmm.
we'll probably agree the defense, as coach has already alluded to,
Mm-hmm.
has been trending upward. The others are still works in progress, coach. But you talk about numbers can be skewed. And so
Mm-hmm.
what are some of your insights on how you're feeling about the Lions offense right
Well,
now?
I think the 52 points against Chicago skewed them a little bit. Then you go down to 17 against the Chiefs, and then we're kind of in the middle there. And again, Dan Campbell's alluded to it, and we've alluded to it, and everybody's talked about it that, we're not taking those turnovers and turning them into points. We're not getting those major points out of that. You get a, and I'm not even sure what the NFL average is on that. I'd love to look that up to see when somebody gets a turnover, how many, when did what's the percentage of them turning into touchdowns? What's the percentage turning them into three? If you go 3 and out, you get a turnover, you change the field. So I think that's stuff that, again, Campbell and Goff even said it takes 5 or 6 weeks for the offense to get on track. But we've had some tough games. We got some tough games coming up, but I think they're trending, and excuse me, I think this week is just huge for that, for the offense, because you get to reevaluate yourself, scout yourself. We used to do it all the time where, he may have Shep scout him, and they may do vice versa and stuff like that. And that's where you get the feedback, and that's where you grow more. So, which is good because then it's the guys in the building and not the other team, how they're attacking you at the game time. So,
Yeah, and the offense, it does seem to be a work in progress because you're right.
mhm.
That 52-point outburst against the Bears affects the numbers a little bit, and it might make things seem a little more comfortable than they are.
Mhm.
Um, it's like, when you're looking at yards per carry and somebody's averaging 15 yards a carry, but they've had 7 carries in the season, and
Right.
somebody
Yeah.
else has had 45 or 50. So the offense a work in progress, and we're going to kind of get into that as to like what we think might be adjusted or what the causes are for it. The defense, on the other hand, I think is exceeding expectations. I mean, the offense isn't playing horrible, but there's a lot of room for improvement. James, I almost feel like I'm asking for more in an unfair way if I ask the defense to do more, considering what they've done despite things. And then we also know, as you alluded to, all those guys coming back. I mean, the defense seems to be in a great spot, and I think a lot of it has to do with Calvin Shepard.
Yeah, the defense I think is definitely kind of ahead of the offense at this point in the season. As Coach alluded to, changing coordinators is a big change for either side of the ball, but I think it's a bigger change for the offense. Even though Morton has some familiarity with the personnel here and stuff like that, I think that he's just a different guy than Ben Johnson. So, but the results haven't been pretty bad, haven't been bad on the offense either. They have three other games where they scored over 30 this season. So the offense has been pretty consistently good. I mean, the worst output was the the 13 they had against the Packers to open the season. After that, they've only been held under 20 once. So the offense has been pretty good. It's not like it was last year when they were just scoring 40 or 50 every week, it seemed, and they were just putting up just video game numbers. But what the defense has done has been nothing short of phenomenal. Kelvin Shepard deserves every bit of that contract and probably more. I think for what he's done with this defense, with the injuries, with having to shuffle guys in and out. I don't know that they've had the same starting lineup on defense from week to week, in consecutive weeks this season. So he's just had to shuffle so many guys in and out, change so many parts that it's been pretty impressive to see.
Yeah, and with all those guys coming back, it just gives you that much more excitement, coach, because last year down the stretch, the offense playoff game pretty much had to play near perfect football because there wasn't room for error because our defense was so depleted that they couldn't hold up. But if our defense is playing this well throughout the season, it takes a little pressure off the offense too. What are you seeing on the defense and going forward?
Oh yeah, totally agree. I mean, the secondary struggled a little bit with penalties early. Again, injuries. We've already talked about that have come up. D line's doing a great job overall. They're probably in mid range. They're not as good as they want to be. Some of the numbers that I came up with that because I guess I wanted to compare a little bit to what last year's team was, and
Yeah.
I think the defense is better in a lot of cases, but I'll point out a couple that I was shocked. Right now we have 42 pass breakups, which is second, tied for second in the league. Okay. And again, I pulled it offline. I don't have
Yep.
the, but I think it's pretty close. We have 23 sacks, which is good for third. The
That's
Broncos,
impressive.
the Broncos who we just watched, I think have like 14 or 15 more than us. They are free. It's crazy.
Wow.
But anyways, that's coming with the D line that we're getting back. We've allowed 14 touchdowns in the red zone, which is tied for ninth. Okay, so that's kind of get. Now these are the couple that we've allowed 66.7% of red zone drives to result in touchdowns, placing us
Oh,
24th. Okay. We're
yep.
13th in the red zone defense efficiency. Now, the reason I looked that up last year because our defense last year we kept saying it's a bend, don't break, bend, don't break. And
Yep.
we were always in the probably upper three, at the worst, upper five in those last two ones with the red zone defense. It
Okay.
was like we always seem to shut things down. So I think Shep's got everything up to the end zone right now. And again, that could come from, well, it didn't come from the last game because our UDFAs tore it up. But so excuse me. So I think a lot of that is will change as we get better and as Shep starts getting comfortable and as Shep starts getting his players back. So I think Shep is more of we're going to attack you and not let you get into a drive, where AG was more of we don't have the bodies. And again, that last year we didn't have the bodies either.
Right.
So it'll be with this bye week right now. I have a funny feeling they are working on this week, or they will be working on it, or they went over that and found that and said, why are we allowing that many touchdowns when people get in the red zone? So, anyways, I just thought it was a cool stat so it'd be something to watch over the next how many games we got left? 10, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. And you're right because
10 in the regular season.
there
Go
you
ahead.
go. I like that. I
Yeah,
like that little annotation there.
yeah.
But you're exactly right because that kept the Lions in a lot of games last
Mhm.
year when they didn't break down inside the 10-yard line.
Mhm.
And so, well, let's start with what's working really well. And we've been talking defense, so let's do that. This whole next guy up mantra has been working really well for the Lions, especially on defense. And they've been really strategic about it, James, because before the season, everybody was like, resign Zadarius Smith. We wanted them to resign Zadarius Smith. Turns out that the not signing him was the right move. And Al Qadim Muhammad has 5 sacks on the season, right? And, he's been rotating in and, he's filled in since Davenport's been hurt. But when guys have gone down, they've reached back and brought guys in, brought Nick Whiteside back. They made a couple waiver claims right at the end of training camp, got those guys up to speed. They've been contributing. So this defense has really been the thing that I think has got most people's attention, especially after that game against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and it's interesting with the whole Zadarius Smith thing, and just that the Lions, I think must have had a pretty decent idea that they didn't think that that the heart was still there for Zadarius, that he was getting older, and that he was thinking about these kind of things, like he just retired out of the blue on the Eagles. So and they had a guy in place. They liked Al Qadim Muhammad. He's no spring chicken or anything. He's new to the Detroit Lions people, but he's I think almost 30. So he's still productive. He isn't a guy that's completely relying on speed, so I think he can continue to be a pretty productive defensive end for a while. And they've drafted well. Their NFL scouting has been really well, has done really well, I think, and just being able to find guys to bring in to plug those holes when they have all these injuries, as well as bring their own guys back from preseason and the practice squad, and just kind of just put all these ingredients together and create a pretty good number two defense, basically, when you have to. I mean, that secondary last week was held together with paper clips and string, and they still held Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers, who's one of the better offenses in the NFL, to the season loads and yards and yards per play.
Right, and again, Baker had enough pressure that he was off target a couple times because the return of Aleem McNeil was huge. DJ Reader's doing well. Hutchinson has 6 sacks. Jack Campbell, coach, has elevated this year. And so remember when we overdrafted him?
Yeah.
So what do you see? I mean, what are you seeing about you're seeing legit elevation right now on the defense and Aleem McNeil's return. I mean, you think about this, it's really incredible what we did last year, considering Hutchinson and then Aleem McNeil and Derek Barnes were all out, and now they're here, and you're seeing it. And so that front seven is looking very formidable. That linebacking crew looks incredible.
Reader only had 17 or 18 snaps last week, you guys. Did you realize that?
Mm-hmm.
And
did
you see the pressures and the sacks, almost near sacks and stuff? Because he's, talk about an older dog. He even said it in his thing, and talk about with that depth piece, you get guys like that. Now they're hungry. Okay, hungry cat wants to eat, and which leans into Muhammad. That dude he's been bouncing around. He's on his couch. He was not going to play. He's not good enough. He can't do this. He can't do that. Yeah, but the Lions saw something in him, and he works his tail off, and he's got an endless motor. And I think that, and again, that's what we talk about. That's what our defense is. That's what Dan Campbell's culture is. The standards. They're saying, you always hear the standards. The standards. Every guy that gets interviewed, they bring up they say the exact same thing. It's like Dan Campbell's in their ear. This is what I want you to say. I just love that stuff. I read it, and I'm going to pull another thing. I read a thing in Amik Robertson where he talked about, he was on Saints podcast, and he talked about when he was in Vegas. I don't know if you guys saw that. And he was drinking he was partying a little bit. He didn't, I'm just going by what I heard him say.
Yep.
And that, and he was in the Vegas nightlife, but he was also, when he went to Vegas, they put him at nickel. I think he didn't have OTAs. So he didn't have a clue. So why did he go out and start drinking stuff like that? Because the anxiety and things like that were built up. And he comes to Detroit and they coached him up. And that's the biggest thing, is that's what this staff does. They coach these guys up to be successful at what they're required to do. And their standards are always high. And you don't see anybody from this team not working for a higher standard. Saint complained about that drop all week. Every time I saw him talking, he brought the drop up, and that's,
he didn't run from it.
He didn't run from it, and they don't do that. And I think that's why we keep continuing to see this. And now it's, knock on wood, if we stay healthy and keep getting healthier, it gets down to this. Hey, if you only have 17 reps, You only have 17, one rep, you only have 30. You better ball out. And competition breeds winners. And that's what the Lions are getting into right now.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it throughout the end of last year with the rise of Amik Robertson out of necessity. And then you're
Mhm.
looking at him this year. And early in the season, the Lions said, we're going to get Amik on the field more because he's earned it.
Mhm.
And that was before it was out of necessity.
Yeah.
And he has continued to play so well that he might not be coming off the field so quickly. We'll have to talk
No.
about that one because he is playing so well.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm giving Calvin Shepard a ton of credit for this defense
Yeah.
because coach, he's mixed up a lot of the looks, right?
Mhm.
Um, he's disguised it and changed it that sometimes Baker didn't know if it was man or zone. And so then that affects how he can read it and see it. And so
Mhm.
uh, I'm giving a ton of kudos to the defense all around at every level, coaching and the players and the backup players and the guys coming back from injury. Everybody has been doing great. Yeah, Terry Arnold had some issues early on. He got hurt. I'm looking forward to Terry on being back.
Oh yeah.
And I think some of that was a bad rap on him and too much of a reputation. Yes, he's definitely at fault for some of those things. But James, I do think Terry is a huge asset to this defense. And whenever he gets back, sounds like he should be back sooner than DJ Reed. And again, we can look into those things too with the transactions. But
Mhm.
anything you want to add about what's working well, you can add on to the defense or talk about anything else.
Well, I mean, the defense has just been, I don't know, they've just been productive. I mean, there's really not much of another way to say it. People complained about them not getting a defensive end, but they're third in the league in sacks. They complained about Terran Arnold's holding penalties, but their secondary has been pretty darn good this season.
Mhm.
And it's better when he's in there generally. Um, I don't have a whole lot of worries about the defense outside of injuries, really. The offense, I think, will come together uh, as things come along, and I'll go into a little bit more in our next segment about the offensive line. On
Yes. All right, Coach. Anything else looking good to you? You want to talk about what's really working? You can go offense if you want. If there's anything on offense or special teams, in addition to defense.
Well, I think I think offensively, we have to get Monty going. I mean, I think the run game is there. It's getting close. It's again, people want, 20-yard run plays on every play. It's not going to happen. But long as we continue to stay ahead of the chains on that situation, stay on schedule, however way you want to word it, I think that's what the offense doing. I think Laporta is becoming that critical check down guy, that guy that's always going to make the big catch when needed. If you're going to double Saint, if you're going to double JMO over top, I think that's the biggest thing. I think Laporta is going to be that little safety valve, and that will continue to grow. And then they'll start working him in. But other than that, no. And the defense wise, I think they're just going to keep getting better with the more bodies they get, the more understanding of the defense and the packages that we're going to be able to run. I can see Shep putting out an all man coverage package, and then that half zone they're running, blunt bracketing two on ones. They got they're doubling this receiver. Next time they're doubling this receiver, but it's just unbelievable to watch on all in 22. I'm having a field day right now.
All right. Well, and again, we're about to go into the areas of conversation or improvement, but I don't want to do any disservice to Jared Goff
No.
because you might not realize this, but he currently is tied for number 2 at quarterback rating for the highest quarterback rating in the league. And this is currently 116.4, the highest quarterback rating or the highest rating he has in his career for a season. Previous to this, last year at 111 was his highest. So through 7 games, he is at a higher rating than any other
Mhm.
season. And 15 touchdowns to 3 interceptions is a really nice ratio. So Jared Goff is playing pretty darn well, and so I want to point that out. Gibbs is playing well. St. Brown is playing well, and I think I'm going to put that into my area of improvement. I almost think the offense relies a little too much on St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs.
Mhm.
And again, any areas of conversation or concern or areas of improvement, this is a very fortunate spot to be and even have this conversation, right? We're almost nitpicking here because the team's 5-2,
Yeah.
they're top 10 in so many categories, but we're like, is there an area that maybe you'd like to see some adjustments? Coach, you talked about getting the balance between the two,
Mhm.
between Gibbs and Montgomery in the running game. I do think you want to see a little bit more balance, only for this reason, and that is at the end of the season, you want to keep everybody fresh.
Mhm.
I don't really, to me, it doesn't matter who's scoring the touchdown, who's running the ball. They both have an overlapping skill set that we've talked about before. But I'm just wondering, do you guys think the offense is relying a little too heavily on those guys, or is it a scheme thing? And I've got some other insights on that. James, you want to start then, Coach?
I mean, do they rely on heavily on those guys? Yeah, because they're their best players. So you go to your best guys. In that offense, their best players probably in order are St. Brown, Gibbs, Sewell, Goff, at the top of your list, but you've got any number of good guys that you could add to that list. But I mean, so you're going to lean on those guys and use them. But they're also giving Montgomery enough work so that I think Gibbs isn't overused and isn't going to be really taxed um, later in the season. They're not running him into the ground, so to speak. So I don't have a problem with how much they're using those guys. Laporta's usage has gone way up from last season as well. But in the next section, I'll go into a whole thing about the difference in uh, touches and targets and all that kind of stuff, comparing last year to this year on the offense, because it's so much pretty much the same personnel aside from basically swapping out Tim Patrick for Isaac Taslaw.
All right. Well, and you're right. And they do want to kind of keep those carries down. Gibbs is at 104 carries right now, you guys. So 104. He had 250 last year, 182 to start the season. Coach, I'm agreeing with James that you know you're going to go to those guys that
Mhm.
are your guys, but the Lions have a number of guys there, and Sam Laporta, Jamison Williams, um, they're there and at times they're doing things and we've kind of gone back and forth, and this is a complex thing and it's not an easy answer. I don't think it's simple, just look at this guy and throw the ball to him.
Mhm.
But do the Lions need to get them involved more consistently, or is it just a situation, a circumstance?
It's percentages, guys. It's what we just talked about. If you line up and Jared Goff lines up and there's eight guys in the box, he's gonna throw the ball. A screen to Monty 2 weeks ago, right? 2 or 3 weeks ago. He had two big screen plays. If the box is light, if you're +1 or -1, that dictates how the coverage is. That dictates what you're gonna do. It's people that disguise blitzes and stuff like that, like the Vikings do. Then you have a little bit more thought process, which Goff is pretty good at it because you never know. If there's eight guys on line of scrimmage if they're all coming. So that's kind of what it is. If a team is going to take away something, the Lions are going to find what is open and what does it be successful. We talked about that, how they take each individual and turn them into a success story. And there's not a guy on their offense that's not a success story. Granted, they don't have as many catches as Saint or as many touchdowns or many as deep balls but there's a success story in there somewhere. And the Lions, what you're going to take from the Lions, they're going to make you pay because you can't take it all. And I think that's the thing we have to do as fans and realize, oh my God, JMO, he's not catching deep balls. They're going to go out and trade for somebody. Well, they just gave him a bag of money, guys. Why would you even make that statement? They gave him a bag of money. He just got extended. So
Yeah.
and you know what? But JMO graded out a 98% on his blocking, and he's the first guy downfield when somebody gets run play. So yeah, I think that the balance thing, and I know that Dan said it a couple weeks ago about he wants more balance between Monty and Gibbs for the reason what you just talked about, for the freshness at the end of the season as well as in each game. So it's going to balance itself out. Monty had 100. Well, how many yards did he have 4 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago?
Yeah,
100,
yeah, a lot against
150
Baltimore
rush, whatever. So yeah, I'm not. It just my point
or
was
Cincinnati.
we
Yeah.
got to get him rolling to where he starts banging some things. And again, he's probably had some bad situations to run into.
Well, he exactly has actually. I think it was that Baltimore game where he had those most yards. But I'm going to give a shout out to Colton Pouncey here because I heard him look up this stat, which is
Mhm.
59% of David Montgomery's rushes attempts have come against 8 or more people in the box. That is number one in the NFL. You do not. That's the list you don't want number one because that makes your job the hardest. Uh, Jahmyr Gibbs has faced 41.3%, 8 men or more in the box. That's 20th in the league. So that right there changes the percentages, as you got to, Coach, on the outcomes there.
Mhm.
And, if we're looking at carries, like I told you, Jahmyr Gibbs has had 104. There's 10 other guys who have had more carries than
Mhm.
Gibbs at this point, and 3 of those guys have played in one fewer game than him at this point.
Mhm.
David Montgomery is actually number 25 in the league for carries. That tells you the Lions are running the ball quite a bit.
Mhm.
So if they're running the ball that much, and we also know they've not been successful on 3rd and long this year, that's also going to impact how many passes they throw in a game. And there's one football. And so it's a really complex thing. I think the reason you're seeing them go to Saint and going maybe to Gibbs is because maybe those other guys are pulling coverage or being covered. And I know you're like, oh, it'd be nice to get it to somebody else. Well, if they work to take Saint away, that's when you see them go to Laporta or Brock Wright or JMO. And I agree, as you said, he got the contract. That doesn't change anything. I haven't seen a change in him in the way he plays. Would it be nice to see them take deep shots? Yes, but the defense has to dictate that.
Mhm.
Um, I do wonder though, is there times do the Lions miss Tim Patrick? Because when they traded him, everybody figured Isaac Tesla was just going to ascend. And there are rookies who do have incredible rookie seasons, rookie wide receivers. But that's not the norm. That's not the standard. And so, Tesla's made some great plays, but he's also made some mistakes. And there's a number of other guys that Goff trusts more to send the ball to. So um, it's a very complex thing. And the fact that the Lions are doing as well as they are doesn't have me too worried. But I think, Coach, you said it during the bye week. Hopefully they're working through some of this.
Mhm. For sure. No, there's no doubt they are.
So, James, anything to add on some of those things there, and maybe even the use of Jamison Williams that a lot of people are overly. I don't say they're critical about, and I don't know if that tells the whole story though.
Yeah, people have to be pretty picky about what they're being critical of because there's not a whole lot to be critical of so far this season at 5-2. So, but it was Justin Rogers pointed out in his film review this week that 3 plays that were designed for Jamison Williams didn't get off the ground because of missed blocks.
Mhm.
2 of them by running backs, one by Monty and one by Gibbs, and then one by Tate Ratledge. I think that offensive line and the blocking stuff will come around
Mhm.
as the season goes along. The Gibbs and Montgomery are both excellent pass protectors as far as running backs. So that's kind of I think an anomaly. Them missing blocks that won't happen nearly as much. But then the young offensive line will continue to gel and get better. Ratledge is a rookie. Glasgow is playing in a different position this year. You've been shuttling guys in and out of left tackle because of injuries the whole season and played 3 different people there. And Mahogany's in his second year, having he played basically 2 games last year
Mhm.
Yeah.
as in his rookie year. So so he's basically a rookie too. So that unit is only going to get better and better and better, I believe.
Yeah, and there's 2 elements to the offense: the offensive line, and the entire offense in general. When we talk about blocking, because everybody plays a role in this team in blocking. The tight ends, the wide receivers are huge. And Coach, it's been hit on that. You know, it's not just one person. It's pretty much everybody misses an assignment here or there. It's just when you have 4 or 5 different people doing it once or twice in a game, then it adds up. And, you know, not offensive line aside, receivers, tight ends, missing blocks, that changes the entire complexity of a play, but also the drive, because then it stifles the driver, puts them in 3rd and long. And so, you know, is it a is there a reason that seems to be happening more this year? And you know what? I don't even know that that's a stat and that's accurate. That's just the eyeball test that it seems like it's happening more, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's different assignments or whatnot. It just feels that way. What are you seeing?
It's replacing key veterans. We lost some key veterans on the offensive line. I mean, that's what it's all about. And James has talked about, we two starts and a rookie, and that stuff's going to happen. And then you're shifting a guy out. You're shifting left tackles in. You're shifting left tackles in that maybe have been that sixth offensive lineman that we play. If we're playing a ton of 12 personnel. I want to look that up because we've been playing a ton of that just for blocking concepts. Plus, it just puts a defense in bad situation. If you're going to run nickel, so that stuff's all going to come. The game one was it was too loud and we were really young and we looked bad. And the Chiefs game was, a couple big black. We missed a couple. Excuse me. Blocks in the middle could be, maybe the gap was wider for Gibbs than normal. A gap was wider because Rutledge stepped too far to the left or chased, and those are things those things will be all corrected, and we know that week in and week out when we make mistakes, they're going to continue to get corrected. What happened the week before against the Chiefs, what did not happen against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And what happened against the Packers did not happen the next week, and so on and so forth. So I'm not, they're going to continue to get better. So let's just stay healthy. Let's just stay healthy, and the sky is the limit. We know that.
Yeah, I do think the offensive line is going to continue to improve because of all those changes. I was more thinking about, some of the receivers not hitting their blocks. Like those perimeter screens rely on really good blocking. And I think it was a Kansas City game that just weren't working at all because we couldn't hold our blocks. And that's where I've become more of a fan of just the screen dump off pass, which you need a few seconds for the guys to get down the field. Then you leak Montgomery or Gibbs out of the backfield.
Yeah.
But
screens are hard against a press man coverage team like the Chiefs, as aggressive that Spags has them. So, those are if you get that one chip block, look out. And we just didn't get it. And there was a key that they had on that, but that's how Spags coaches defense. And if you're giving that, so those are the and kudos to the Chiefs. I mean, you got to give them if it happens in the next game, then oh God, we better really be concerned. But yeah, it's just Spags.
Yeah.
To piggyback on your thing about 12 personnel, the Lions are playing 12 personnel 33.25% of the time, which is way ahead of the league average. League average is 23.9%.
Yeah.
So it's good
and
stuff.
That comes with that left tackle spot too. I mean, a lot of it's to help out there. We've had 3 different starters there, and we don't know what that number is going to look like when the season ends. It could be 4,
and those are designs too, guys. Remember 12 personnel last year? I pointed out we had 12 personnel, and then we threw the fader out to Brock Wright for a touchdown.
Yeah,
I think it was Brock Wright. Remember? Do you guys remember that last year? Where we ran him and Laporta. It might have been a Laporta, whatever. And Saint stayed home and blocked on the backside. You guys remember that? These are all designs. It's all going to come out. And maybe this game, they're going to throw a fade route to one of the tight ends, and you guys are going to go, oh, my God, now I see what he was talking about.
No, they put everything on tape, that they do a variety. And what it is you want the same formation and be able to run 4 different plays out of it so that they're thinking one thing, and then you're able to do something different. And you set it up at one point in the game, and the Lions have been really good at that. The kicking game, Jack Fox, punt-wise, 27 punts as long as it's 66. He has put a remarkable number inside the 20 of 14 as long as it was 66. So out of the 27, more than half have been inside the 20. And then Jake Bates, 8 for 11 from field goals, only 72%. Those 3 field goals, though, have been from beyond 50 yards. James, what's your take on the kicking games?
The kicking game is just in good hands. I don't have any worries really about that at all. Like you said, Fox's Bates's misses have all been from long distance. He's been pretty good at hitting a bunch of those too. And the one thing as a rookie that we were all worried about him is with the kicking the short ones, and he's been pretty automatic at that.
Yeah, I've been very happy with Bates in his second season doing as well as he is, and those long ones being, what they are. Coach, what do you see now the kick game? You're pretty happy with that?
Oh yeah, Foxy's. He's going to turn the table and change field position and change anytime he wants to. You know, the other thing too about Bates, and we didn't talk about a couple weeks ago, when he had five kickoffs, I think it was, and they're all inside the 3 yard line.
Yeah.
Something like that, 4 yard line, 3-3-2-1-1, something, I don't know. And I think and now he's working on, I think he's working on elevating a little more height, so a little more hang time on that. So, you know, once he gets that down, I think he's going to be one of those guys too, where he's going to start doing those, you know, hitting the landing zone, spinning helicopters so that it's hard to place. I think he just works on his craft all the time, and it seems like each week the kicks look different when I watch them. You know, for instance, that week, so that's a plus, and you know, and I'm sure he's probably at the indoor facility kicking all break. You know, he probably didn't take a week off.
Well, right. And as far as Bates goes, though, is, you missed 3 field goals and you've not attempted quite as many as some of the other people. Your percentage is going to be lower.
Yeah.
And those are longer field goals he has attempted. But like both of you guys, I feel very comfortable with him. It's our kicker. I'm not stressed out about it at all. So,
Yeah. One other thing about Bates, I think that's kind of interesting is, when people were stressing out about, oh, we got to bring Zadarius Smith back and everything, and the amount of money that they would have had to spend to get him. When we talk about who the Lions have as free agents next year, Bates's name needs to go in there too because he's a free agent. They signed him originally to a 2-year contract, so he's going to be a free agent. So that money that they didn't spend on Zadarius Smith can roll over the cap next year and basically be used for re-signing Jake Bates.
Mm-hmm.
there you go. You got to always be thinking forward.
Mm-hmm.
Forward down the field. That's what we'd like to see the Lions do on kick returns. Get them as far forward as possible. And right now they're averaging 25.4 a kick return. The Commanders are at 31 and the Colts are at 29 to lead the league. Bottom of the league is 21, the Falcons. The Eagles are at 22.9. So the Lions are just above. They're tied with a handful of teams, but right around the middle of the pack. I still think the kick return game's a work in progress. I think I've echoed multiple times. I'd like to see someone like Khalif Raymond back there in the kick return. I want to see a traditional kick returner because I don't think the other things have worked exceptionally well. But that's just from my layman's eyes. Coach, what have you seen from the kick return game, and any thoughts on what could be different?
Yeah, I mean we're right there. I mean we're in pretty good shape distance wise, and I think
Yeah.
we want to see that splash play. We want to see that. What's the little dude's name from the Cowboys? Um,
Turpin.
Turpin, thank you. We want to see somebody like that. But I was reading a thing. I don't know if Flip talked about it. I think it was Flip talking about it that they want a guy that's going to catch the ball. They want a guy that's going to attack as much as he possibly can, and they want a guy that's not going to put the ball on the turf. And I
Yeah.
think so from that standpoint, because our as good as our offense is right now and how much better it will be as the season progresses, they want Jared Goff and Saint and all those guys, Gibbs and them can't put any stats up if they don't have the ball in their hands. So I think that's a great thing. I think and again, that's talk hidden yardage chart again, guys. I would love to, again, maybe I'll dive into that tomorrow and see where we're at hidden yardage wise. But I'll guarantee we're plus.
All right. Well, a reminder, folks, at Roaster Jack Coffee, if you go to their website, put in the code LIONS, you get 20% off your next order. So go check them out. Shout out to them. And you know who else likes coffee? Dan Campbell, right? He goes out for those morning coffee runs. We often see those on Instagram or social media with his wife taking the pictures. And it's dark in the morning now, folks, because, well, we're in Michigan and it's late October. But now let's turn our attention to the coaches. All right. I want to start with Dan Campbell because his evaluation should be through the roof. I mean, he should have won Coach of the Year last year, maybe the year before that, but definitely last year. And I don't know what this year looks like yet because it's not written. But he recently shared something that I thought was really interesting. And they talked about how they had all the depth there, all the opportunities for those backups to come in and play defense and basically shut the Tampa Bay Buccaneers down. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a reaction to last year, you guys. Most people would think that. But Campbell said it was back in 2021 when he realized how important it was to have good depth on the team. And that was when I think the first year here, right? Or the second year is they had a lot of injuries. And, it wasn't just last year. And so that's what's got them where they are today. He said, these guys are are taking reps. We want them to be ready to play, which I think also probably went into coach to why they didn't just keep 53 guys on the roster at the end. They kept 50 or 51 and they added a couple later. But he's always learning and he's always taking what he's learned and applying it as he moves forward. But obviously last year played into things too. But we saw the fruits of the labor against Tampa. Yes, they had backup receivers in, but they didn't have a backup quarterback in. And all those backups in the secondary came through. And that just gives me that much more hope and confidence going forward this year, knowing who they're getting back, but also how well Campbell has done as the head coach, even though he lost both coordinators.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think you're right. I mean, the other thing too is he talks standards all the time, and is he the first guy in the building and the last guy to leave? And no matter, I don't care who comes in there and coaches with him. He's coaching up coaches to be coaches. I mean, that's the biggest thing about it. And his standards are set high, and I think that's why our coordinators have done such a great job. And again, Shep's been there, so he knows what's asked. Shep learned under AG. Shep's learned under a bunch of guys. Martin was there in that 21 season you're just talking about, right? And so again, I don't think, when we're talking coordinator wise, I was not, and we talked about, we're not concerned because this is Dan Campbell is the head football coach. Okay. Ben Johnson is not. Okay. And AG was not. They worked under Dan, and Dan showed them how they are going to be. And they taught him lessons too. So yeah, I'm extremely happy with the coordinators.
Yeah. And again, James, just the leadership of Dan Campbell. I mean, that win, as we talked about, moved him 5th all time on Lions wins for head coaches, breaking the tie with Monty Clark and Joe Schmidt. He was tied at 43. 3 wins away from tying Buddy Parker at number 4. So,
yeah, I think people kind of underestimate how much of an imprint Dan Campbell puts on this offense. People talk about the 4th downs thing. That's obvious, but that was something that he brought. There was something when he was the play caller for that one, like a little more than half of a season, early on in his career when he let Anthony Lynn go. That was something that he brought to the table. He brought that to the table, and he brought running trick plays. Those didn't happen before that with the Lions. So I think he drilled that into Ben Johnson's head. That here, get creative, run trick plays, go crazy, and we're gonna go for it on 4th down. And it's continued with Morton. Not so much with the trick plays, but still going for it on 4th down. I think that all comes from Campbell, and he deserves a lot of credit for that because it's pretty forward thinking, and people think of him as an old school coach, but this is pretty new school stuff that he's implementing.
Yeah, those are excellent points, and I also think it's interesting that with Shepard doing it as well as he has on the defensive side, you still have Dan Campbell, I'm sure, influencing Johnny Morton, coach. And I think this bye week, remember last year they said the bye week they're going to scout themselves, which I'm sure they probably do every year during the bye week. Yep. But you also talked about this is a time, and maybe it's the offensive side, especially as you've alluded to, and the defense for that red zone defense. They're going to work on stuff. The coaches are going to work while the players have some of that time off. I know they gave some coaches some time off too, but this is an opportunity to adjust. And that's what also gives me so much hope is that there is a lot of room for improvement and possibility yet. They're not here playing. They're not overachieving. Let me put it that way. We know another Detroit's team that seemed to overachieve most of the season. And then as the season wound down, it got really frustrating when suddenly things weren't happening and weren't working. This team is not overachieving right now. It is, I would simply say they are achieving. That's what I'm going to put them at. They're doing what they're supposed to do, and they have room for more. Nothing's guaranteed, though. But the talent's there, and that's what gives me more hope. Where, I loved rooting for the Tigers, and it was a lot of fun, but you saw some talent deficiencies in some areas that just couldn't be overcome. And I don't think it's a similar situation with the Lions. I think a lot of things have been built the right way with this team since Campbell, Brad Holmes, and Sheila kind of got going with this. So what are you seeing with that, and how much hope has that given you?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I love saw Campbell's press conference about giving some time off and stuff like that. And I don't want them in the building. I want people away the building. But then I think he ended it with, but I did give each and every one of them a homework assignment of things
Good.
that, and I love that. And, the other thing too is, Shep walks into Morton's office. Morton walks into Shep's office during the week, during the day, getting ready for games. They're still talking about what'd you see? What should I do? What should I do here? What would you do here if I ran this? I mean, those are all good things. This past week with this time off, they're able to spend a little bit more time doing that, a little bit where they can put time aside and say, hey, let's meet for 2 hours. Let's meet for 45 minutes instead of let's just talk for 5. And so I think it's the timing was pretty good. We
Yeah.
talked about that earlier. Last year it was what, like week 4, week 5,
Week
and then
5.
you had, it'd been nice to be a couple weeks later. But I think the timing was perfect with the banged up secondary and still accomplish what they want. And I'm sure they're where they wanted to be at this point, but they're going for the higher mountain.
All right. Well, let's take a look at the roster. James, you mentioned all these guys that are coming back. Are they expanding the roster limits as well so we can just put them back on there and everything's good?
That would be nice if you could do that. But I mean, the benefit of that is that they're going to be deeper than ever.
Mhm.
The bottom half of the roster is going to be more experienced than it was before, and they're going to have more guys that they're confident in being able to put in at least in certain situations, and just not have any trepidation about, oh, okay, yeah, let's put him in. We'll be good. So, they will have to probably they're going to have to crunch some numbers, and you're probably going to
Yeah.
see people that get released that you didn't want to see necessarily released or anything, or guys that are going to maybe they're going to try to stash back on the practice squad or something. So this is going to be a bit of a numbers crunch eventually.
Yeah, Zach Cunningham just got moved over to IR, which helped for somebody coming back. But when you get some guys back, it's what's going to happen with some of these guys who have come up, and it's going to be a situation like we had 2 years ago where they tried getting Trevor Nowaski back onto the practice squad, and he got poached. He got taken by Arizona, and they signed him and kept him for the entire offseason. And so, Coach. Are any of these, how the line's going to maneuver this stuff, and how nervous are you? I mean, we were worried when we were surprised that someone didn't sign Whiteside at at the end of training camp because he played for Washington before. You talked about that early in the or late in the offseason, right before the regular season. He's got some experience, and he just showed everybody. He and Hallett and Millette, they played lights out for the most part. On Monday Night Football. So there's been a lot of eyeballs on them. It's, we risk losing them but we're going to have to make some moves.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think the free agency after the 90-man cut, there was what was that percentage? James had the percentage on how many guys actually get signed from that,
Right.
which
It was low. You're
was
right.
Two
really,
or
really
three
low.
percent, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's one thing. Now, it's not preseason tape, it's game tape. And Nick is going to be, I think Nick is one of those guys that, if he does get moved when Arnold comes back, but we still have Reed still out till, I think, what did we say, week 12 or something like that? I think we read. I think I sent the guys today or something like that, whatever. So, he's going to be one that's going to stay around. Hallett's going to be one that can stay around. Is Kirby's knee good now, Joseph, to go this week, or do we rest him another week because we got somebody that can stand next to Branch and do what he needs to do. So, yeah, that's going to be the bad part. I think, and I'll talk about Nick a little bit because I know a little bit about him, but I think the biggest thing with Nick is that he's worked so hard, he's prepared himself, and he's been ready when called upon. He was with the Skins, and then he got cut, and then he sat. I think he sat a year. Then he got in the UFL. I don't think he started with the Bottleneck right away, if I remember right, or didn't start right away. And then when he got his time to start, he never lost it. And then, then the line comes in Lions camp ready, and Campbell can't say enough about him. And then, the last preseason game, he played well, but again, you got it. I mean, you're not going to keep him over a draft pick in that situation, right at that point. But bang, he gets a phone call and he comes in and he balls out. And that comes from his work ethics, what he's done all his life. I mean, he did it at Saginaw, being good friends with his dad and stuff. And I talked to him about his high school days, him and I'm gonna bring Nowatzki up too. Those guys are guys that were, hey, they ended up at Saginaw Valley. Jim Collins, who recruited those guys at Saginaw Valley, he saw something. I saw tape on those guys and they're recruited, and I was like, wow, how did we get him? But the point is with those two guys is, and Hallett and the other ones is, they are ready when asked upon. They're going to do everything you have. And the other thing is their football IQ is very, very high. And so I think that's why. And I don't want to brag about them, but if anybody's listening from other than the Lions team out there, Whiteside is terrible. Don't even think about picking him up if he did get released. And so, those guys, but those guys are Lions and they're going to stay Lions. And I know the Lions are going to do whatever they can to keep them.
Coach, they're just a product of the scheme they're in. They're really not built for any other system. Just in case anybody else is listening,
right.
Not at all. But James, I mean, that's the thing, right? These are the reason that the Lions bring in select players so that they will fit everything that the whole team is about. Love the word, hate the word culture. It fits. It's not a cliche with the Lions. And the thing though is, it's not right before the season. It's not every team's got 53 or 52 starting guys healthy. There's injuries across the league at this point. The Dallas Cowboys, I think, were down to like their final guys in the secondary. Maybe it was the Broncos. Somebody was really thin at secondary. I think it was the Cowboys. And so there are some teams out there that can be like, hey, one of these guys could be a fit. So it's going to be a little bit of roster juggling, like Coach said. It's a good problem to have versus the other end of the problem, which is you don't have enough guys and you're trying to find people off other people's practice squads. That happened about 11 months ago. So anything to add, James, on the roster thoughts on the adjustments here before we talk about trades?
No, I'm good.
All right, well, then let's talk about trades. We've already said this roster is so full that we probably don't even have enough space for everybody that's already here. But the internet says you always got to bring somebody in. Don't believe 98% of what you read. I don't know. I'm making up stats on the spot here on that. But we might not be bringing somebody in, okay? But we might. Anything's possible. Is there a spot, if the Lions did make a move, that you're thinking – this would be the spot? Now, the one that intrigues me the most is tackle, left tackle, because Manu's on IR, Skipper's been banged up, and Decker's been banged up, and they've given Decker time off. And during that time, Manu went out, and then Skipper played, and Skipper's done admirable, but he's not even 100% healthy. I don't know what you could even get. And, as far as the trade goes for a tackle, because nobody wants to give up a tackle. And then, Coach, I'd love to know, how much can you get them acclimated to all these schemes? What's a crash course look like? But again, and we've got some guys that are going to be coming back. We know that. But I just didn't know if, I don't know if the Lions are going to make a move. I don't think they will. That's my short story long. But if they did, it seems to me that tackle would be the most important position, because if Decker is out for a longer period of time, then you're really stretching it thin. You guys already alluded to all the new guys we have up there. Then suddenly it's kind of like Penei Sewell is the only guy that's been there consistently.
Yeah, I mean, we're good. I think that's what Dan Campbell said. We're good, right?
Yeah.
Of course, the social media went ballistic on that, but I think we're good. But again, Brad Holmes, we know Brad Holmes, you guys. I mean, I think he traded up for some guys in drafts, in the previous drafts, and everybody's like, what's he doing? So left tackle wise, yeah, I think that's one of the biggest ones, because who knows if he'll be back next year. Decker will. I mean, I know he's been talking to Rags about it, and his body's banged up. He's been around a long time. And the only other way to get a left tackle is if you got a team that has a rookie or a left tackle in the waiting, and they're going to get another draft pick because they got to rebuild their team. But boy, left tackle, it's the same thing like last year. We need an edge rusher. Brad Holmes talked about that. It's tough to get an edge rusher because how many are there out there? And so, I don't see where do we need what's going to help us. I think our D line's good. I think they feel it's
Yeah.
good. I just don't think there's, I agree with you on that. I, we'd have to maybe we take a couple of young guys and send them out for somebody to come in and, are we one player away from winning the Super Bowl? I think we got a roster to win a Super Bowl, and I think that's what those guys are feeling. So, I'm not going to say we're not going to do it because Brad Holmes is always on the wire, always talking, but I think it's a low possibility that we're going to do it.
Yeah, like I said, that's the one spot that I see to be our biggest vulnerability at this point. James, any your thoughts and insights on possible trades? The deadline is November 4th, which is like the Tuesday after the Lions game against the Vikings.
Yeah, if they do something, it probably won't be a big splash trade.
Mhm.
It'll be like what Holmes has done the last couple of years, which has been little trades here or there.
Donovan
From like Donovan
Peoples-Jones.
Peoples-Jones, exactly. I mean, even Zadarius Smith was kind of a splash trade, but I mean, the Lions gave up what, a fifth round pick?
Right.
So they're not going to give up a whole lot. The other thing is if a team that's bad enough to be out of the playoff race already, what are the odds that they have a good left tackle?
And do they want to trade the starter? Probably not, So then
Yeah,
you're looking at a backup to,
yeah, or an older a veteran, that's kind of a rental, and one of those guys has already been moved. When I think it was the Bengals traded for Cam Robinson. He's kind of been
Right.
that guy the last couple of years that's gotten traded around when somebody needs a tackle.
All right. Well,
Maybe we can get
let's
the Chiefs. Maybe we get the Chiefs tackle because he never holds, or he never leaves early. Never mind. I'm gonna leave it alone. I'm sorry.
all right. Well, let's jump around the division here, and kind of talk about what the Lions are doing. Uh, the Bears and the Vikings, they both lost in
Mhm.
week 8. That puts them at 4-3 and 3-4. So that puts them in third and fourth place still. The Packers play Sunday Night Football, so we don't know how that one's going to go yet, but they were 4-1-1 heading into the week. So, divisional thoughts. We have an opportunity just to kind of look into that a little bit. What are your thoughts on the division? We kind of alluded to it last episode. I think it's going to be close, but I still think the Lions win the division. I think the Packers are going to play some pretty good football the rest of this season. Coach, what are your thoughts on the division?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I still think we're going to win it. I mean, I don't see anything. I mean, we still got to play the Packers head to head at home, which is gonna, there'll be a split there, and and I just think, the Bears are, I watched them today, and they do a lot of good stuff, but and then the Vikings are banged up. Their offensive line is just horrendous, because they got a ton of injuries. So, and then the Packers again, they play, Pittsburgh tonight. It'll be, it's on the road. So, and it's against the guy I think that played there for 18 years. So, there's going to be should be a fun game to watch. I probably won't watch it though.
There you go. James, oh, sorry, coach, just laughing at that last comment there. James, how about you? What are your thoughts on the division?
I mean, it's still pretty solid. It's pretty close. We don't have anybody that's, just an awful team. The Bears and the Vikings have their warts. Of course, Coach mentioned about the line for Minnesota. Chicago still makes kind of mistakes here and there. They got some young guys that still make mistakes and stuff, and they kind of got it taken to them by the Ravens this week with a backup quarterback even. So I think that those two are falling behind a little bit, but they're still not bad teams.
Yeah.
Uh, the Packers and the Lions are the front runners, I think, in this division for sure, and it'll be interesting to see which one of those teams loses a game to a Chicago or a Minnesota that makes a difference in the division.
Well, that's exactly it. Those teams are not pushovers. They are decent teams, and we have to go on the road to Chicago, last game of the season, and we do play Minnesota twice yet. So, and so yeah, the Bears much improved from last year. The Vikings, they've kind of gone the other direction, but they are still a very talented team. And they've got a number. You said it, James. They got a number of issues right now. I spoke with a reporter out of Minneapolis, and he said it's not just one thing. It's a lot of different things, a lot of injuries. But JJ McCarthy hasn't really played, and he's about to start playing. So we have to wait and see what happens there. The story's not written. They're 3-4, and the quarterback that they kept over Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones is coming back. So we'll see what happens with that. Conference-wise, now, Coach, again, we're not the coaches, so we can look at this. We can talk about this stuff. We don't have to just, oh, I forgot to talk about one other thing. The one thing the Lions have done well this year, Coach, is win. Just win, right? 1-0, 5 out of 7 tries. That's a pretty good number. But conference thoughts. Who are the teams that you think are the strongest in the NFC right now, who might be the most difficult for the Lions to face?
Well, I mean, Philadelphia is Philadelphia. I mean, they win ugly. They win all different ways. They win. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. A.J. Brown can complain about getting the ball. Then all of a sudden he can be injured. Then they talking about maybe they're going to trade him. It's always a dysfunction group over there. It seems like last year they went through the same stuff. It's just nonstop. It would drive me crazy as a coach. But I think they're I think they just do what their coach does, the exact same stuff. So I don't respect him a lot as a coach, but I respect them as a organization because they do a great job. So, they're good. Dallas is done. Tampa's still there. I mean, I just think Dallas is done. I mean, their defense is horrible. And,
did you hear that Dallas was trying to, they spent phone calls looking to trade for Crosby or Hendrickson? Yeah. I'm like, again, we never know if those are true, but it's like, wait a minute. Could you just rewind what you did a couple months ago? So Dallas was done before the season started. Although they made a little bit more noise than I was expecting, and anything can happen.
Tampa's good. I mean, Seattle, the Rams. I mean, there are some great football teams. If you listen to any talk shows during the day, like I do when I'm doing work, there's right now 19 teams that are going to win the Super Bowl. It's just nonstop about this is the best team and the best program and the best quarterback and the best wide receiver and the best defense. It's nonstop, no matter who it is. So these next 4 or 5 weeks are going to kind of determine. I think everybody says, oh, it comes up to that season, but I think these next 4 or 5 weeks before you get to that Final Four is really going to separate some of the people. The Niners, they're scary. They're banged up, but they're scary. And so. It's the perfect storm. Again, the team that's the healthiest is the team that's going to win it. And the Eagles were healthy last year and they won it. And so I think that's the health. If we're healthy, we're right there with any one of them.
All right, those are a lot of good thoughts right there, James.
Yeah, pretty similar. I mean, Philadelphia is obviously, I think, the number one threat to the Lions. And then you got to keep Green Bay in that conversation as well. Tampa Bay, we know that they're a dangerous team. The Lions faced them when they were kind of wounded at wide receiver, so they're a very good team too. And Godwin will be coming back pretty soon, and
Bucky Irving
will be back, and Bucky Irving. So that offense will start producing it a lot more, I think, down the road. And then the NFC West this year is pretty brutal. It's become what the people thought the NFC North was going to be. In the Seattle, the Rams, and San Francisco are all really good teams, and Arizona is not a pushover either.
Yeah, I think the team that scares me the most is the Rams.
Yeah.
I really do. I think they're playing some good football. I don't know how they lost to the 49ers. That baffled me, but that shows what the 49ers can do. And those two teams have each other, in the same division. Mm-hmm. Seattle's like the Vikings from last year, man. And it's not, and maybe it is because Sam Darnold's there. So I'll just anoint at that. But the Rams are the team that scares me. They scare me the most. I think they are the most dangerous, with Devontae Adams going over there to add as another receiving duo threat with Puka Nacua. And Matthew Stafford is still playing at a very high level. So the Rams, never discount the Eagles because of all the talent there. The Bucks are going to get healthier. And so there's a lot of good teams out there. Fortunately, I like our chances against any of them. I'm not saying we'll win. I am saying we have the team to compete with anybody. And you just don't know. I mean, the NFC looks more daunting than the AFC at this point. And 2 years ago, everybody thought it was the other way around. And so things can change pretty quickly. And so you've got Washington at 3-4 on a 2-game losing streak right now. Nobody saw that coming. And Atlanta is on a 2-game losing streak, and they're at 3-4. And so those two teams could turn things around and get dangerous. We'll see what happens. But yeah, those front runners, to me, it's the Rams, and then I'd probably put Seattle and the Eagles in there. But there's a number of contenders. All right, guys, that's it, man. Bye week bliss, right? The bye week's over. So any final thoughts before we wrap this up? And then later in the week, we'll have the Minnesota Vikings preview. James, any thoughts on the first half of the season? Any MVPs or anything like that you want to throw out there?
I think we're all good. We're going pretty long for not having a game to talk about.
I kind of felt the same way. Yes. Coach, how about you?
Oh, no, I'm good. Let's get into game week.
Yep.
All right. Well, then, on that note, thank you to Roaster Jack Coffee, roasted incredible beans since 1999. Visit roasterjack.com. Use the code LIONS. You get 20% off your next order. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Please tell your friends and family about the show. Find us on social media like Twitter, Instagram. You can find us on all major streaming platforms, including YouTube. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reviews. Criticism is allowed, preferred if it's constructive. And if you got nice things to say, we always love hearing those. Check out more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.